So I would like to find out who's apologised for the meeting, please. Oh, sorry.
We have apologies from councillors Jindy Atwell and Stella Jones.
I'm just saying, it looks like everyone else is here on the committee. Thank you for coming. So, declarations of interest. Any member who has a declaration of interest, will they please make it now or actually when the paper comes up? Thank you. On the agenda. Thank you. Minutes of the last meeting, which was on the 23rd of July. Anyone got anything that they want to comment on that? So we could go through page by page, but I think possibly everybody's read it and don't think there's any real contentious issues. So is everybody satisfied with that? Content with that? Yeah, all agree? Thank you. Yes. Welcome, Louise. We have started and we're just checking on the minutes and we've just approved those. We're on to number 4 on the agenda, public participation. There is no questions and there's no one here, so that makes it easy. So, and there's no questions from members either, so we'll go straight on. And we haven't any urgent items, so we're straight into the first paper, which is number 7, Private Sector Housing Assistance Policy. And on this we've got 2 recommendations, and we will need a proposer and seconder when we've had the paper actually explained to us. And we've got here with us reports is from Richard Conway, the Surface Manager for Housing Standards. So can I hand over to you, Richard?
I think Councillor Taylor is going to introduce the...
Pardon? Oh, is Jill... oh, sorry, the Housing Cabinet Member. Yeah, thank you. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ezard. My name is Jill Taylor. I'm the Cabinet Member for Housing and Health, and I hope you can all hear me. A bit confused. Tell me if I can carry on.
Oh, sorry, Jill. We can't hear you very well. Could you
okay,
either...
I'll try and speak up a bit more. Is that any better? Can you hear
it's
me?
A tiny bit better, but still not very good.
Okay, I'll speak even louder. How's that?
That's better. That's better.
Okay, I'll just see if I can put this up probably slightly on here. Okay, I'll give it a whirl anyway. If you can't hear me, please just give me a nudge and I'll repeat what I was saying. The People in Health Overview Committee are being asked to consider recommending that the private sector housing assistance policy contained within a...
Oh, you've put your there we go.
Sorry, it went off onto mute, didn't it? I wonder, Richard Conway, if you're there, could you read this out on my behalf, please? And I do apologise for not being there in person.
Madam Chairman, yes, I can do that if you would like me to. I shall take the role of Councillor Taylor, if that's all right. Hold on. If just hold on a second. Okay, so the People and Health Overview Committee are being asked to consider recommending that the private sector housing assistance policy contained within Appendix 1 of this report is approved by Cabinet. The policy sets out how the council can help to improve private sector housing in several different ways. Legally, to offer financial assistance outside of mandatory grants, the Regulatory Reform Order, England Wales 2002, requires the council must publish a policy setting out how they will do that. That policy can include grants or loans for the purposes of improving living conditions. The areas that the policy addresses are adaptations for disabled people, facilitating disabled people moving to more suitable accommodation, improving energy efficiency, bringing property up to the decent home standard, and bringing long-term empty properties back into use. A policy was originally approved by Dorset Council in November 2020 and has been updated several times since. And that's been done by approval of the Corporate Director for Housing and Community Safety in consultation with the portfolio holder for housing. The reason that the Council is being asked to consider this policy again is that there are several significant inclusions to the policy before you. The additions are a top-up grant raising the maximum disabled facilities grant to £45,000, an inclusion of a moving on grant for disabled people to help them move to more suitable homes, and the inclusion of the energy improvement grant, which also helps disabled people and is part of the cost of living crisis funding that Council has recently offered. The changes are set out in the table shown in Appendix 2 of the report, and more detail is within the policy itself. Funding for this assistance is from existing budgets. Money for disabled adaptations comes from an annual grant from government. Loans are financed from previously received private sector housing renewal grant, which was also received from government. And the energy improvement grant, as I've said before, is funded from the Council's Cost of Living Crisis Fund. There is therefore no new demand on the Council's budgets if this policy is approved. This policy strongly supports people to live independently in their own homes or to help them move to more suitable homes. It contributes to tackling CO2 emissions through the Healthy Homes Dorset initiative, which is within the policy, and also helps people with pre-existing health conditions access nationally available grants and funding. The negative impacts on and positive impacts for several of the defined groups, and those are age, disability, carers, rural isolation, single-parent families, poverty, and the military. Speaking on behalf of Councillor Taylor, that she moves that the People, Health and Overview Committee recommend to Cabinet that the policy shown in Appendix 1 of the report is adopted. Also, that the Corporate Director of Housing and Community Safety, in consultation with the housing portfolio holder, Councillor Taylor, is delegated authority to make minor changes to the policy going forward, as set out in the second recommendation of the report. Thank you.
Richard, have we initially got any questions? I've got a couple of things I'd like to ask myself. Right, Councillor Mercer.
Hi, Steve Mercer from Blackmore Vale. When I was scrolling through a number of the loan schemes and grants, there's comment about clawbacks on some if a property is sold. The one bit I wasn't clear on is whether any of these are means tested.
Yes, Councillor. That varies. Disabled facilities grants are means tested, but loans are not. They're issued on the ability of the person to be able to pay. So there's an assessment that's done on a person's income. So we're loaning to people on the lower incomes normally, because they're asking for loans because they can't access loans from the commercial market. So getting that right and getting that affordability test is done, but that's not a means test. The DFG is disabled facilities grants are means tested. The other grants vary because they are, some of them are nationally available and have different criteria. If there's a specific one that you are interested in, I could probably tell you whether that one is or is not means tested. Okay.
Thank you. Oh, yeah. Andy Todd?
Same subject, if that's all right. This page 19, section 3, the Disabled Facilities Grant. Andrew Todd, Coal Hill, Wimborne Minster East, apologies. Disabled Facilities Grant, the maximum statutory DFG grant is £30,000, discretionary top-up £15,000. It then goes on to say in the documents that in the event that the grant recipient disposes of the property within 10 years, the authority may recover the value of the grant, aided works that exceed 5,000, but will not demand in excess of 10,000. That's quite a disparity between the two. I assume there's a justification behind it. I'll be interested to hear it.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Good question. Those conditions are set by legislation. So they may appear quite complicated, but those have been those were approved by Parliament. So we don't change those. They are quite complicated in terms of how they're administered, and there are also conditions about how that money can be recouped as well. The reality is a quite complex situation. It is there mainly to prevent, when we might be doing quite a sizable grant, it's there to prevent someone from moving within that time period and then us having to do another disabled facilities grant in a new property. So in those cases, we can then claw back some of the money up to a maximum of 10,000, but it's it's a fairly complex condition, but we didn't make that one up.
You okay with the answer? Yep. Thank you. Carol, please.
Thank you. Carol Jones, Sturminster Newton. I just wanted to clarify, because I know there is, I don't know if it's a separate grant to help elderly people stay in their own homes as they become frail, or is this part of, could they apply for this as well, perhaps a wet room downstairs or, you know, so on and so forth, or is that a completely separate funding pot?
That probably is a separate funding pot from adults. Comes under the Care Act, I think that. This is for people, to be eligible, you must have a disability, yeah. And these grants are only eligible if it's referred from an occupational therapist. So wet room, for example, is a good common grant that we do.
Carol, yes, thank you. And John Orrell?
Thank you, Chair. So, Councillor John Orrell, Melcombe Regis, which is Weymouth Town Centre. Warmly welcome the policy and recommend for approval for Cabinet. Particularly the Healthy Homes Dorset, that's been working very well in my particular ward. We've got one of the poorest bits of Dorset, lots of terraced housing, which is very cold, and Healthy Homes Dorset have done a grand job over the years, so it's good. I can't object to anything. What I would say is this is a national scheme and it's wholly inadequate for our housing in England. If we carry on at this speed, it's going to take about over 100 years to get our homes properly insulated. So if we're really serious, we'd be doing this on steroids. There was a plan from the current government when they were, about a year ago, they were looking at doing many more houses, like about 29 million, and they dropped the target to 5 million. I regret that. And if we look ahead, if we get our building standards correct, you could get to the stage of having passive house, so you didn't actually houses that are so well insulated you don't have to heat them because they're heated by your own body heat and your domestic lighting. So I do welcome this, but I would point out we need to do 20 times more than this for our nation, because we have the coldest, least healthy houses in Europe. But having said that, I do welcome it.
Thank you, John. Any comment? I think. Something I was going to raise from the chair. Several people said to me, what are the statistics and the evidence you've got that use of this in the past, and is it on the increase? And you know, how do we know that the money that you've got from government is going to cover everything that you that actually thrown at you, if you know what I mean? You know, everything, all the ones that are applied or applying for this. And the other one was all the grants are funded by government except the energy one. Is that right? We do it out of Dorset Council with our own money. And how much has that cost in over the time that we've been supporting that? Thank you.
I think I'm on. Yeah. Okay. The first one's quite a complex question because the amount of funding that's available from government through Healthy Homes Dorset, the trust to help people, has changed quite a lot over the time, and we're encouraging residents of Dorset to insulate their homes, but within a national picture of quite a complex grant structure. So we've been feeding back to government to simplify the grant system that they offer. And to a certain extent, that has landed. The most recent announcement from government on the next tranche of, I think it's called the Warm Homes Grant or Warmer Homes Grant, is they're expecting us to put in expressions of interest, and it is a simpler grant system. And we will be putting in a sizable bid in the millions of pounds for that particular grant to help Dorset residents. And that will be to do large retrofit type roles, so PV cells and air source heat pumps. So there is some improvement in the national picture, but it is a complex one, and we always advise people to ring up Healthy Homes Dorset because they have their finger on the pulse about what money is available at any time, and that does change over time. So it's quite a complex picture, that one. The second one is about the grant, the energy efficiency grant in the policy is being funded by the council's cost of living crisis money. And it is the particular tranche of money that this is aimed at is for disabled people so when we're doing a disabled facilities grant, which we do a lot of, and we also do a lot of minor works, numbered in the thousands of people. When the technicians are there and they go into a person's house and there is a very poor heating system or the very poorly insulated house, it's sensible to fix that at the same time as we're putting in a wet room, for example. And so that funding is helping people do that. And to give you an idea of how that has helped so far, in the last year, there was £317,000 worth of funding from the council's cost of living fund, and that helped 64 people, disabled people, have new boilers, new energy efficiency windows and insulation, for example, depending on the property. And this year to date, we've spent £40,000 and 10 people have been helped so far in this year. And that work is ongoing.
Any come back on that, really? I know. But can I ask, with the statistics that you must have evidence of we've actually supported in the past, do you ever keep that, or do you just feed that back to government as it's their money? Is that possible to answer? Thank you.
Yes, it is, Councillor Hazard. I mean, if it would help members, I can do a briefing note for you on the various, because it's quite a wide policy. There's a lot of statistics, but I can give you some headlines on what each of those areas has done in the last year, and that perhaps give you an idea of the stats. I've got some of those available here. I can reel them off for you if you want.
I think that'd be quite interesting.
Yeah, okay. So just to give you a picture of how much we're doing. So in terms of disabled facilities grants, so those are major adaptations for people who to help them stay independent in their homes. Last year we spent £3.7 million and delivered 371 major adaptations to people in Dorset. We also do minor adaptations, so that works up to £1,500, a lot smaller. We spent £406,000 on those and did 1,140 jobs. So that's things like seats in a bathroom, or some handrails, for example, getting in and out of access into a home. In terms of Healthy Homes Dorset, the scheme, they actually dealt with thousands of telephone calls in the year. It resulted last year in 309 properties being insulated and 116 properties having cavity wall insulation fitted. So that's over 400 properties improved. And that saved 425 tonnes of carbon per year. I'm never sure how you could picture that in your head, but that's the figure that they produce. The money and funding that they had was £363,000 that was fed in from Dorset various funds, and that levered in £1.7 million of it's like government money, wider money.
Councillor Redford, can I add to Richard's point? Andrew Billany, Corporate Director for Housing and Community Safety, mentioned in the report. I just wanted to partly come back to Councillor Orrell's point about whether doing more, because we're doing a lot, but it's dealing with obviously allocating scarce resources in an offer. So I think that's just to give some reassurance about always pushing to squeeze this further, but also looking for opportunities to get more funding in. So, for example, with the housing association sector, there's something called a social housing decarbonisation programme, so working wherever we can to get opportunities to do more. I'd add this point as well, given Councillor Rezard's question. There's the value of this kind of work does stretch across the council, and we do a lot of work with adult social care, children's social care in particular, making sure, particularly around adaptations, that can make a considerable difference to people's care package and well-being from a social care perspective. So slightly different point, but I think it's just to demonstrate this isn't just getting the money out the door. It's about making sure we get that value across the people we serve within Dorset.
Thank you, Andrew. It is quite a complex set of statistics with so many different needs. But thank you for that. Can I then go on? I think is it John Taylor now? Oh, Andrew Todd again, is it? Thank you.
Andrew Todd, Coal Hill, Wimborne, Minster East. Remembered this time. Page 39, section 7, it's estimated that in areas of Dorset, up to 36% of homes do not meet the Decent Homes Standard. Areas, I assume that's not Dorset-wide, particularly given that on page 14 you put the national figure is at 14%. So I'd be interested to know what the Dorset average is, just as a guidance. And that 6.8% of properties are highly likely to have a Category 1 hazard for excess cold, obviously, which is why we passed the bill the other day that we did. I am interested to know what age the profile of age of the properties that we're having to do this remedial work is, how old they are. I'm not going to ask you to identify which developers tends to come up for remedial work earliest, but I think it is worth not adding problems to the stock that we have and make sure that we are making sure that the right stock is going in at the beginning. Thank you.
Yeah, that's quite a complex question. I wouldn't have the those figures to hand about the age profile, but clearly the older the property, the more likely there is to be an issue with poor insulation and older heating. We have a lot of rural housing stock in Dorset, and but also we have urbanised areas as well with problems. So there are specific challenges that we face in terms of meeting the Decent Homes Standard. so I think probably the best thing I could do in terms of the housing stock is come back to you on that, because I don't have that information to hand.
Thank you. We have one other person. We've got Kathy. Kathy?
Kathy Lugfern, down north. I'm interested in the bringing empty homes back into use. Do we have a list of the empty homes that we have in Dorset?
Yes, we do, from various sources. The primary one is from council tax information, but also, but not all properties will be on that list. So some might be hiding in plain sight, and we do rely a lot on the members of the public reporting them to us so we can investigate them. You might be aware that every year in February time we have a bit of a media campaign, and that generates a lot of interest from the public about long-term empty homes. Not all homes are the same. Some homes might be people who, for example, have gone into care and are long-term care and therefore are empty, but there is a good reason for them to be there. There are second homes, and there is also sort of the Airbnb type properties as well, which may also get reported as long-term empty. So there's lots of little subsets of those, and we build that picture together in a database. So we're investigating those properties which have been empty for a long time, there's no prospect of them coming back into use. So we focus on those properties to try and get those ones back into use. And we're currently investigating, in my team in Housing Standards, approximately 140 cases. And we've currently a smaller number of those where we're taking compulsory purchase action. It's not part of this particular policy. This is about helping people, but we also use the stick as well. And if we can't get a property owner to bring back a property reasonably into use, we do sometimes take quite severe action to bring the property back in. There's a relatively high-profile property in Bridport, which is currently under CPO, compulsory purchase action at the moment. But the loans are there to for empty properties. A quid pro quo on that is that we ask, if it's someone we're lending them a large sum of money, we get them to agree to to take one of our tenants from the housing register for a period of 5 years. So we don't just hand the money out and get nothing back for it.
A supplement to that, I think it's beholden on all councillors to report empty properties in their area. During my East Dorset District Council days, I helped with the court action against getting a house possessed, and I believe Dorset Council still owns that property today and rents it out. But, we're the people that go about in the wards, we deliver leaflets, etc. If you're suspicious about a house being empty, you should be reporting it. Thank you.
I've just come back on that and second that one. Yes, please. You can do it online on our website. We may already know about it, but we'll tell you if we do, and we might give you some information about what we know about it as well. So, yes, definitely. The local knowledge of councillors is actually really important. We get a lot of referrals from members.
Thank you very much. I think we're getting a bit bogged down in detail here. So we need to, we've got a couple of people lined up to speak. And just to remind people that those on the committee speak first, and then anyone that's not on the committee will, members will get a chance to speak or ask a question. But that's why we've actually got a couple of people online, I think, that want to speak. And anyone who wants to ask a second question has to wait a little bit later until everyone who's asked the first question gets their fair share of the questions, okay? And obviously, if the question comes up that you were going to ask, then obviously we can, sort of don't want repetitive things. Thank you. So we're going on now to, I think, Will.
Thank you, Chair. We will check out Councillor for Stour and Allen Vale. I think I've seen your equality impact assessment. You say there are about 21% of people with a disability or an illness. And I think that's a good metric to have. And I'm just wondering whether the £4 million is enough to cover that gap. We know health inequalities for that group of people. They are vulnerable. And I'm not so sure whether the £4 million is enough to address that either in year or years after. That's probably part of the question. The second part of the question perhaps would be, it does say that the risk is low regarding everything. It says low, and I'm thinking if there's no funding next year, that's a big risk, unless if we know we are guaranteed to get it. But again, there could be a growth on year. We have people who move into Dorset. This is a demand situation. There has to be a risk somewhere, and I'm thinking there's a financial risk, but there's a bigger risk to those people who have got either health issues or they've got a disability in terms of their health needs, health inequalities, perhaps. Probably question 1A and 1B, but welcome any views. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll take that away, Councillor, because the quality impact assessment was went through our checking process with the Equalities Officer. So I will check that because I'm not 100% sure of of what risk criteria are being applied to that. So you mentioned people coming into the area, that the actual risk that's being assessed, it may not be may not be that. But I will I'll take that away and have a query with the Equalities Officer.
Can I add to the point? I think certainly in reviewing, if taking that as a steer from the committee, I mean, we can look at whether that's a medium risk at least. Certainly from the financial point of view, that future funding streams, etc., can never be guaranteed, can they? So I think that's a fair point. We'll take away.
We have Craig Marks online, I believe, that if he wants to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a quick question, just for a little bit of background or disclosure. I am actually a retrofit coordinator, so this is very much my industry in the day job. So a lot of this is actually quite familiar to me. So the question is linked to some funding that I work with quite often. In the report, there's I think it's literally about a paragraph mention of the Energy Company Obligation Round 4 funding. I'm just curious to know how that might sit with council activity. I mean, Eco4 does have its challenges, but it is also central government funding that doesn't come out of our coffers. And actually following on from the previous question around financial risk and, you know, X amount of million here, X amount of million there, I'm just quite, you know, for me, the big benefit of something like Eco4 is that it's not costing this council any money. But does provide lots of the retrofit services that are touched on for lots of sort of at-risk people. So it's not perfect. I think most government funding processes aren't, but I'm curious as to why it's sort of not featured as much as I personally would have liked. But I'd be interested to hear your comments. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a good question. I mentioned earlier about the complex nature of some of these grants. Eco4 falls into that category. It has changed quite a lot. Eco4 is funded by the money that comes from the utilities companies. So it's not sort of government grant, but it comes from the sector. The issue with the Eco4 is that funding stream varies, and it varies over the year, so that Eco4 can sometimes be available and sometimes not available, and sometimes available for some people and sometimes not available for some people, and it's a national scheme that we don't have any control over. So what we have to recommend is that people who are interested in insulating their homes, they have to contact Healthy Homes Dorset, who have an up-to-date picture of exactly what is available at any one time. So of late, Eco4 hasn't been particularly one of our more important schemes to access because of the lack of funding that there is there. So this is where when we feed back to government about the simplicity of their grant systems and the various systems that are available, I would hope that going forward, whatever government scheme is proposed, is simplified in the way so that people can understand what is available. That's not a particularly clear answer, I think, but if you, hopefully that does help you a bit in that.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Very interesting, all of these questions, and it is very complex, as you see, and very variable. And I have actually thought that maybe we could have a briefing session for the members on all of these different grants and funds at some time in the future. And I think we need to talk to Jill Taylor, who is the Cabinet member for that, to see if we can perhaps set that up in the next 3-6 months. How does the committee think about that? Would that be good for everyone? Yeah. And people online? Oh, Jill's online. How do you feel about that, Jill?
Yes, I'm hoping you can hear me now. I think that was probably a bit better. Yeah, I'd be more than willing to put on a webinar on disabled facilities grants. There's just so much of this stuff. I have a job getting my head around it because every single part of this is different. And I have to say that I've really enjoyed the debate today. I thought it's been very, very useful. Thank you. So yes, we will do a webinar.
Thank you, Jill. I think that we actually have pretty well exhausted all the questions now. Did Steve Mercer want to ask another one? Oh, you did.
Yes, thank you very much. I can imagine these grants and loans make a tremendous difference to people's daily lives. I was just looking online just to see how well actually we publicise it. It's a bit wordy, I have to say. It's written more from an academic point of view. I'm just mindful that, is it 1.3 million people don't take up their pension credit? How do you publicise this to people that actually could benefit from it? It's a good education piece for us as councillors because it signposts for us when we've got an issue with a householder that actually this is the place you need to go. But how do you publicise it so that people, it's in a language that people actually get, if you like, and understand?
Because this policy is quite, it cuts, as we found out, it cuts across a lot of different areas. You wouldn't want to have all of this in one place because it would be too complex. So for example, if someone is looking for an adaptation, we have our own. There's a separate landing page on our website for the Dorset Accessible Home Service, and for Healthy Homes Dorset, they have their own as well. Getting language in terms of plain speaking and plain English is always a challenge, but especially when we're trying to describe something that has grant conditions, for example. So, but I do take your point about plain English. It's something that we're always striving to improve, and try and take ourselves out of the local government officer standpoint of speaking, which I do realise we do, and we do a lot. But as I say, because it's such a wide-ranging policy covering a number of different services, they have their own individual sort of landing pages on our website. So that's the primary way for people to access the service. We do have leaflets as well that we do in the old-fashioned way, and also when people contact us asking about these various issues, we signpost to those various services.
But we will take that away. I think that first port of call, but make it obvious at the first point of contact, the landing bit, as Richard said, I think we can certainly look at that. I think it's a fair point to take away from today, to make sure it's as accessible as possible.
I think that's a really good point. And also, I think we ought to publicise our successes in the comms. I think this is what we don't do very well in Dorset Council, is actually say, these are the successes we've had, especially, you know, just the annual ones or whatever they are every time it comes up, that you could put something in saying, these are, you know, all the adaptations we've done and what have you, or even put it in the Dorset, you know, magazine that we have. I think, you know, it would open people's eyes to actually all of the good that is done with these grants and things like that. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor David Taylor-John, St Mary. Just a quick question on the loans aspect, really, because it's kind of been skipped over a bit, on the fact of what are we looking at APR and things like that? Are we looking at the calculation of interest rates? Because I'm thinking it's a bit like it's a bit of an open situation where if there is a loan situation going down, people actually understand where they're going with this. Is there a percentage, interest rate, set rate? Because we don't really know. Thank you.
So all the loans that the council offer are at 4%, and they have been. We can vary that whenever we like, but historically they've always been at 4% for simplicity's sake. But also, I mentioned earlier when an affordability check is done, occasionally, it's quite rare, they will do what's called an equity mortgage, where there are no repayments if someone has literally. So for example, if someone is near the end of life but needs essential repairs to their property, we may do a loan, put a charge on the property, and then recoup that when the property is then sold at a later date. It's quite rare. Most of the time, we are doing it at 4% interest, and the length of time when over which the loan is repaid is also one of those things that they will vary depending on the affordability of the loan. So, okay.
Thank you, Richard and Andrew, for your input. It's been fantastic. I think we'll round this up, and can we have a proposer and seconder? Proposing. Thank you, John, and seconder, Carol. Thank you very much. And the recommendations are to recommend to Cabinet that it adopts the private sector housing assistance policy, and 2, that authority be delegated to the Corporate Director for Housing and Community Safety in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Health and Housing to have the delegations as set out in the report. And everyone agree? Or on the committee? Thank you very much. Thank you. So we'll be moving on to the next paper. This is Families First for Children Pathfinder Progress Update. And I think, again, we have the Cabinet Member here, Claire. So if you'd like to introduce it, Claire, thank you.
Thank you, Beryl. Yeah, Councillor Claire Sutton, Cabinet Member for Children's Services, Education and Skills. I'm going to hand over to Paul to present, and I'll chip in along the way. Thanks.
Thank you. My name is Paul Dempsey. I'm Executive Director for Children's Services. This is an update report on the Families First for Children Pathfinder. It's the third progress update we've given to this committee. The last one was in February 2024. It's quite a long report. I'll just skip through the sort of background and where we are now. So The Pathfinder is one of several test and learn approaches to delivering the last government's transformation strategy, Stable Homes Built on Love. The new government is said to be very positive about the strategy and openly supporting the strategy, which is clearly good. The strategy was a response to the independent review of children's social care, which published a report led by Josh McAllister in May 2022. And that review essentially found that there was a radical reset of children's social care services needed across the country. Otherwise, outcomes would continue to be poor generally for children, and the children in care population nationally would rise from 80,000 to 100,000 children, and there would be costs nationally rising from 10 billion to 15 million. So a fairly ambitious programme now in this strategy to try and avoid some of those potential implications. So we were chosen as one of 3 Wave 1 Pathfinders to deliver this Pathfinder, which is really half really of the government strategy that we're delivering, and we were chosen because the Department for Education liked the way excuse me, that we were delivering children's services in Dorset and the way in which we delivered multidisciplinary locality services in line with the way in which the strategy excuse me, is going. So there are 4 key pillars in the Families First for Children Pathfinder, as you can see in the report. First one is about developing and delivering multidisciplinary family help services in localities to bring early support to children and families to prevent families getting into crisis. The second one is about developing more deeply integrated multi-agency child protection services. The third one is about unlocking the potential of the wider family network, so supporting and facilitating nans, granddads, uncles, aunts, close family or friends up the road to support parents to care suitably for the children and keep families together. And the fourth pillar in the strategy, in the Pathfinder, is about clarifying the role of safeguarding partners, and there's a particular emphasis in that pillar about enhancing the role of education as a safeguarding partner alongside health police and children's social care. So we spent several months on co-design with our partners and children, young people and families, and we've designed a model which we've been delivering since June the 17th. You can see some of the details there. We have developed all of those pillars. So we have a new family help service which has merged what was previously targeted early help and statutory children in need work. We have integrated more deeply with our partners in child protection responses. We have enhanced the way in which we work with families to ensure that families are leading their plans of support and also their child protection plans. They are now having much more say in how they respond to risk identified about children that they're caring for. We have been funded to the tune of 4.9 million over the sort of 18 months of this programme. The programme ends at the end of March 2025. We have invested much of that money in additional capacity to develop those services. And there's also a chunk of that funding that's gone into something called family network support packages. So essentially in that family network pillar, we are holding meetings with families, the wider family network. We are supporting wider family to develop plans to support children in their family, and where those plans need resources, money, services, goods, washing machine, travel expenses, etc., to support the wider family, to support children and parents, we're providing that in the form of family network support packages. So we have a lead in the service doing evaluation. We've done a lot of evaluation since the start of the model in June. Generally, I can report positively that things are going well. We've had positive feedback from family members saying that they like the new family help space because there's more consistency of worker. Previously, families had a change of worker between targeted early help and children in need. Now it's one worker because that's one journey and one space. They used to have a different assessment when they stepped up from targeted early help to child in need. Now it's one assessment. Families aren't having to tell their story several times to several different staff members. So that's been really positive. Partners are reporting liking and feeling much more involved in the multi-agency child protection space and much more involved in decision making. So decision making is much more multi-agency now. And families have reported positively, excuse me, on family group conferences, which is those family meetings where we support families to come up with their own solutions. I think that is general summary of feedback. We're continuing to evaluate. Some of our data has changed. It's early days yet, so we're not sure, the validity of that, but our assessment timeliness has improved in that family health space, so we're really pleased with that. We are continuing to work and develop the model. We're testing and learning. It's called a test and learn approach, and we're working very closely with the Department for Education and the other Wave 1 Pathfinders, which is Lincolnshire and Wolverhampton. And since the start, excuse me, of the programme, 7 other local authority areas have been identified as Wave 2 Pathfinders. So they're several months behind us and essentially doing much the same model, although there are some different minimum requirements for the Wave 2 Pathfinders. So that's where we're at. We're delivering as we intended to. It's going well, and we're going to continue to monitor what we're doing and tweak where we need to.
Thank you, Paul. Yes, this is a fantastic chance that Dorset's got to take this forward for families and support families. And I think you made a really good start. And I think what we need to know whether this new government is going to actually support more funding into the future. I know you put that into the document, but have we got any pointers at all about what's going to happen in the future? Yes, I've got you down, Claire. Yes. Okay, can you answer that first, Paul?
I was actually going to address that point, Councillor Azad, if that's okay. Yeah. I'm coming to that. That's the main thing I wanted to say, actually. Yeah, I mean, the whole Pathfinder has been a massive compliment to Dorset Council's Children's Services to be one of the first 3, and it's yielded massive benefits already in terms of prevention and early intervention. As you say, the really big question is whether the funding is going to continue. Now, we don't know that for sure. Theresa Levy always used to say we were on a promise from the DFE. We do know that the new government is very keen on this and really supportive of it. I mean, obviously, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Is it tomorrow? Yeah, amongst other things. And if the funding doesn't continue, obviously there will be some very, very serious conversations going on about staffing across children's services. But even if it does come to that, even if it does come to, the position where we do have to lose some posts, what this will have done is transformed areas of children's services delivery wherein it's generating savings throughout the system fundamentally. But Paul may want to give a little bit more detail than that if you'd like him to.
Yes, actually, Paul, that would be very good if you could.
Yeah, I would have said exactly what Claire's said about Councillor Sutton has said about the uncertainty of the government funding moving forward. But as I say, they are very strongly positive about the Pathfinder and the model. Essentially, the kind of the motivation and the aims of the Stable Homes Built on Love strategy and the Pathfinder very much aligns with what we were already doing in Dorset Council Children's Services anyway, which was about using our resources to support children and families as soon as we identified that they identified that they needed support to prevent them getting into crisis. Now, when families move into crisis situations, it's much worse for them, but it's also much more expensive for the council. So we were having a lot of success with early prevention work and working in deeply integrated partnerships. The Pathfinder model is just enhancing that. So although I have talked about a radical reset, actually in Dorset we were already doing much of that work along those lines. So this has enabled us to enhance that. It's taught us some different ways actually to enhance our model. So as Councillor Sutton said, it will leave us with some advantages that we didn't have before. Even though we were running a good service, we've learnt a lot through the programme. We'll look to continue it. We will have to look at how we finance things moving forward if the government don't support it financially in the way that they have so far. But we will certainly be left with some really improved ways of working and practice and innovative kind of models.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Oh, we've got Carol.
Thank you, Carol Jones, Sturminster Newton. I'm just wondering, it would be really good to, if we talk about what we're able to prevent, so therefore the costs that come with that, we're going to have to demonstrate that in some way, aren't we? Have we got anything sort of happening that we can actually say, well, look, by spending, so for example, I know you've got 70 extra staff that you've recruited with Pathfinder. In order to keep those staff, we've got to show that we're making enough savings. So are we doing that? And the other thing, coming back to your 4 pillars, I think that you could actually add another pillar there, and that's with the formation of the family hubs and all of the help that will provide in terms of the community interventions. But at that point, we do need to talk a little bit more about data sharing so that because I certainly know that in some situations, I mean, we're working with families where we know so much more about them than any social worker, any teacher, any head, and so on and so forth. And I think actually understanding some more about the background of actually what's been happening, especially when families are frightened of liaising too heavily with social workers in case the children get taken and so on and so forth. But that's a really important strand, actually bringing the community into this as well. But yeah, I'm just wondering, at what point do you think we're going to be able to look at facts and figures? What do we think we are saving? It's a difficult question, I know, but it's going to have to come up, isn't it? And how do we compare to the other 2 Pathfinders that came in with us? Thanks.
So it's really early days, so we're not really sure about what our data's telling us yet, because it's only been 4.5 months. A key chunk of our spending in children's services is on children in care placements. So what we would hope to see with a preventative model is that fewer children need to come into care to be safe. As fewer children need to come into care to be safe, we will save on those care placement costs. That is something that Council has done actually before the Pathfinder, because we were already investing in those kind of areas. So that's one key metric we'll be keeping our eyes on. We would anticipate as well that fewer children, the step before that is child protection plans and child protection processes and taking families to court. That is traumatic for families, but it's also costly as well. Even before you get to children coming into care, you know, we pay our legal team. Every time someone goes to court, we've got social workers doing intense work, writing court plans. So that's expensive as well. So those 2 things cost a lot of money. Actually, early intervention is much better for families to get it then, and it's better value for money. So very early days, but you know, in a year's time, we would hope to see those 2 things being impacted by this programme. I skimmed through the report in the way that I was speaking. So there is reference to the voluntary and community sector in the report. So we've invested quite a reasonable chunk of money from the DFE grant into the VCS sector. So we've commissioned 1 voluntary organisation to deliver family network meetings in the sort of community space, in our early support space, and from those meetings, the voluntary sector organisation will help a family develop a family plan, and if it requires a family network support package, we will then fund the family network support package. So we're very much trying to direct people where it's appropriate into the community to have their needs met into the community, not coming into our sort of service if they don't need to. And our family hubs, we very much see family hubs linked to the family help space. So although we started the family hubs before the Pathfinder programme, it's really easy to link up because essentially they're doing that locality family help. There are multidisciplinary professionals delivering from the family hubs. We'll link them up with, or we are linking them up with the main sort of family help space in that locality. So we very much think that we can continue to make stronger links between family hubs and the overall family help service. So and the VCS sector. So we have an integrated front door which has been enhanced. That's somewhere in the report by the Pathfinder. So we've got more family help workers in there. We've brought in our Dorset Education Advice Line into the front door, and we are the front door now. More emphasis on trying to signpost and direct people into the community sector where that's safe and appropriate. So and to the family hubs. So really trying to build those links.
Thank you. Can I just come back quickly? Do you know how we compare to the other two Pathfinders, or whether they've got anything super special that we don't know about, or vice versa? Are we sharing info?
Yeah, we are sharing info. In fact, tomorrow we're meeting them. We've got a presentation to the Association of Directors of Children's Services Policy Committee. They've got different models to us. They are meeting the minimum requirements that the Department for Education set for us, but there was some flexibility. So each of the models is different. I don't think they're doing anything super duper that we should necessarily replicate or vice versa. We just got different models because of our starting points. I think they delivered sort of early support in a very different way than we did. They have different staffing structures. So we do talk, and if there's things we can learn, we will be doing, and we'll be learning alongside the Wave 2 Pathfinders as well. But so far we seem to have different models, but we are talking to each other.
Thank you. We have got a number of other people. We've got Kathy, Will, John and Steve online, Steve Robinson. So Kathy, please.
Kathy Lugfern down north. About 2.1.6 on page 60, which is the collaboration between various organisations and the Family Health Hub Network. We had our advisory board meeting in Ferndown this week, and I'm a member of that board. And one of the concerns there was what Carol had brought up about information sharing, because there's obviously going to be information held by different sets of people, and we need some kind of policy basically to know who should be sharing what with whom to make it the most effective experience for families. So that's something that Dorset Council needs to look at. But also, the other concern of the board was that there is a threshold that isn't necessarily met for intervention, but parents are really struggling at the moment. So we've had a lot of cases where mothers who wouldn't necessarily come to our attention have had total breakdowns in front of staff at family hubs, struggling to cope. Now, they wouldn't meet any intervention. The children are not necessarily at risk of harm, but we used to help those parents and those families through incredible years, but we appear to have moved away from that, or triple P. So what is the offer now? What should we be putting in its place? It's about support for those families with trusted professionals, a chat over a coffee, meeting other parents with the same problem. We don't seem to be doing that anymore, or at least not in the East anyway.
Yeah, thank you. We try and avoid talk about thresholds in children's services and talk more about need. We do want to meet need at the earliest point and work with families where they haven't had to reach a particular step because we don't want them to reach a particular step. And that's, part of that is what our family hub should be doing, and our family help service should be offering those kind of early support services. But I think Amanda wanted to come in.
Thank you, Councillor Lugg. Amanda Davis, Corporate Director for Education and Learning. Your point about Incredible Years is a really good one, and it was something I used to facilitate myself, and I know the impact it had. And it's fair to say I'm a beloved student of Carolyn Webster Stratton. She's a fantastic lady, and very privileged to have worked with her in the past. What we have done, though, is commission Triple P to continue. The reason we've commissioned Triple P is because we just think it's a bit more flexible for families. So Incredible Years is brilliant in terms of outcomes and impact it had, but it does rely on families attending a 14-week course. Triple P offers online interventions. It offers all sorts of ways for families to get exactly the same impact, and that's been proven through their work. So we have just commissioned. What we intend to do is share the love of that with our providers and communities to say, would you like to become a Triple P practitioner and offer the training out? We've already had a high interest from education settings, for example, who would love to do that and then offer it in their community setting. So I hope that helps.
Thank you, Cathy. And thank you, Amanda. I was just wondering, Amanda, it's actually the Triple P is not actually mentioned in the document. Is that something that was sort of omitted, or is it something separate anyway? Thank you.
I guess it's something we were going to do anyway, regardless of Pathfinder. So it's not just about Pathfinder, it's a way of developing our family hubs.
Thank you. The next question, Will.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Paul. I was just wondering, in terms of, similar to the earlier paper, in terms of metrics and numbers, I'm not so sure about the 4 pillars, how much, the numbers of people that we have intervened with, how many families we're dealing with. Also quite interesting to know where we are spending most of the money. I'm new to this in terms of children's services, but that would really help me just to understand where's the spend among your 4 pillars, where's most of the interventions. You probably know this, I don't, but it may well be something for the next iteration. It might be something to include from the previous paper. We say 21% in terms of people with illness or learning disabilities. It would be useful. It's probably somewhere I might have missed it, apologies, that maybe we have, 5,000 children in Dorset that we are actively engaged with, 3,000 families, that type of stuff. Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, I haven't got exact numbers in front of me, but I can give you a bit of a feel. Where we spend most of our money in terms of a group of children is overwhelmingly children in care. And we have about 440-ish children at the minute who are children in care right across Dorset. That has been going down. It was, I think, about 475 about 4 years ago. And our... the numbers of children in care who are unaccompanied asylum-seeking children has increased in that time, whilst the number of Dorset local children has gone down quite significantly. That's because of the prevention and partnership work that we've been successful at over the last 4 years. We do know that we've been rebalancing the system. So the number of children and families we work with at a sort of early help, early support space over the last 4 years has gone up intentionally. The number of children in care has gone down by 10% actually between 2021 and September 2024. The number of child protection plans has gone down a little bit, not quite as dramatically, but a little bit. And the number of children in need has gone down. So those are all the statutory social work cohorts: children in need, child protection, children in care. So we're pleased that they've gone down, and they've gone down because we're doing much more of that early work at early support and early help. So we know that that's saved us money, and it's been better for families. When we compare that data against data across the country, the average figures, well, at the same time that we've come down by 10% children in care, the national average children in care population has gone up 10%. So we're going the other way, and child protection numbers have gone up and children in need numbers have gone up. So we've done something that sort of goes against the rest of the country the last 4 years in Dorset. So we're a few steps ahead of most other local authorities in this kind of prevention agenda, which might make further progress a bit tougher because we've got less ground to make compared to other local authorities who might take up the Pathfinder sort of approach next year and the year after that. So I hope that helps a bit.
So John Orrell, Malcolm Regis. A couple of observations and then a question. I'm very supportive of the paper. I will be voting in favour of it unaltered. The observations is over 40 years in general practice, I'd noticed as money got tight, the thresholds used to rise and rise, and it got progressively more difficult for families to meet the threshold. So this different approach of trying to move away from saying, no, you're not bad enough, to we're here to help you early is really great and warmly welcomed. So, and it may take years to reap the dividends, but it's the right thing to do. So that's good. Page 55, I notice some of the non-qualified social work staff taking on Section 17, taking on the more complex needs. I used to have a few patients who were non-qualified staff and they found that hard and left the service. And that's not necessarily the wrong thing, because what's happened is you've probably kept in the service the ones that could cope and adapt to this change. And it should be focused on the needs of the child rather than the needs of the staff. So although it's probably been a painful process for some, it's still the right way forward because it's supported families better because they don't have to go through the same thing. So you're on the right track. Right, now then getting to the questions. It is, I notice on page 57, multi-agency collaboration. And on page 60, again, a whole section on collaboration. And the question is, are you getting the collaboration? So I'll give a few examples. We've just been talking about insulation and housing. If houses aren't insulated, then poor families have the choice between eating and heating. And many times they don't eat. Our children are nationally getting shorter because they're not being fed in the last few years. So for the rest of the committee, what we talked about in the previous item also affects these families. So are you getting incorporation from the housing? A lot of the families that end up with children going into care, there's addiction problems behind it. So this is a question that you need to be pushing your public health colleagues to support you, because there's two approaches to dealing with drug addictions. There's a rather punitive recovery model, which people, if transgress, they're ejected, or a more helpful and accommodating harm reduction model, where families are supported and enabled to keep their children. And that's a very real thing within many counties and in Dorset. So again, are you being supported by public health? And finally, the police, again, similarly with things like cannabis possession, small amounts of cannabis possession, people get labelled as drug mules. They're not criminal masterminds, these people. I know some of them end up in prison. They women, and they lose contact with their families, and their families go into care. I've seen that happen. Completely pointless, because they come out of prison worse than when they went in, but their families are in care. So a different approach from the police is also required to make this work. So are you getting cooperation from the police? Are you getting genuine multi-agency buy-in?
Yes, I think we are. So it's sometimes tough. We've all got budgets that are facing pressures, so that's always a consideration when we're working with partners, and we're all asking a bit more of each other. I would say the housing department in the council, we work very well with the housing department, so that's a very good positive. But obviously there are challenges, as we all know, with housing in Dorset. One of the, I think, really helpful things that we did in the Pathfinder is that we used some of the funding from the Department for Education to second an officer from the police into the project team and an officer from health into the project team. So it's been really helpful for us because they've helped us to navigate their systems and they've got used to our systems. So that's worked really well in terms of designing and delivering the new model. In relation to the question you asked around parents with drug abuse challenges, we have an initiative called Safeguarding Families Together, which is adult services professionals working with our child protection social workers. So that's addressing drug abuse, substance abuse, and poor mental health, which used to be referred to as a toxic trio. Those are the three key big things that affect parents' ability to parent their children safely. So the concept of that programme is if you can deal with those challenges for parents, they'll be able to care safely for their children. So we already had that across half of Dorset, in Dorchester and West and Chesil, and with the Pathfinder starting, we've now rolled that out into the North and Eastern Purbeck. It was successful in Dorchester and West and Chesil, and it's promoted by the DfE nationally as something that should be taken up, particularly within the Pathfinder programme, because that is a good example of evidence-based multi-agency working. So yeah, we have got good partnership working there, and Public Health here has provided funding towards that. For the remainder of this year. So that's really good. And I think health and police, I would say, have been positive. We've been working with the DfE to say, actually, you need to talk to the government bodies that are in control of, Department of Health and your colleagues who are in charge of the police as well, and perhaps provide some funding for them for this project as well, so they can do it across the country in the way they've done it here.
No, that's music to my ears. That's a very good reply. Thank you.
We have one person online, and it's Steve Robinson. If you could make it quick, Steve, to finish off the questioning, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Really, the conversation has moved on a little bit, so I'll turn it into a reflection and an observation. Carol raised earlier about the importance of social impact. And the response that Paul rightly gave was about how we made our savings and how we were being very effective in what we do. But I wonder if there's potential for viewing the work that goes on in the much longer term, the value to society of someone who has successfully moved on from care, had a successful childhood, and the long-term benefit to the economy, long-term benefit to health, and the savings for the whole life course of that individual. So it's a reflection rather than a direct question.
Thank you, Steve. I don't know if Paul's got a comment on that. It's more of a statement than a question.
Yeah, I would just agree. Really positive for society. If we're preparing our children to be responsible, contributing adults, then that is very helpful for society and for Dorset.
Thank you very much. It's been quite interesting. I don't think we've got anything outstanding. Does Claire want to mention anything at all? I do believe, coming from the chair, that sort of triage working or working with all the different organisations, especially the frontline ones, are so important in this. And I think going forward, we will keep an eye on it and certainly hope that the government comes up with loads and loads of funds. Anyway, the recommendation is to consider the report and support the ongoing participation in the Families First for Children Pathfinder programme. So do we all agree? Yep, good. Well, we'll move on pretty swiftly then. Yeah. I would like to congratulate Paul and the Pathfinder, and obviously your predecessor and all the people that work in it, because it is pretty new and we all need to support it. And we certainly we'll be looking to see what happens in the future. Thank you so much. Now moving on to item 9, Dorset SACRA Common Agreed Syllabus. Now we need to have a recommendation here to go to Cabinet. A proposer and a seconder needed, and the recommendation would be to recommend to Cabinet that it adopts the locally agreed syllabus. So this, for me as chair, I haven't ever come across this before. So I must say it's completely new to me. So it was a bit of an eye-opener. And I'd be very interested on what the paper and what is Amanda's going to report to us. But I think it's going to be really under Claire's cabinet. How is it under your auspices as a cabinet member? So we'll let you introduce it.
Thank you. I'm actually going to hand over to the expert. I've been grilling Amanda on the contents, for the last couple of days, and it's your turn to grill Amanda on the contents now, I think, and I will provide answers where I can. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Sutton. So, Amanda Davis, Corporate Director for Education and Learning, and I'm delighted to be joined by the Chair of the local SACRA, so the Standard Advisory Council on Religious Education, Debbie Tibby, who is a volunteer, as many members of the committee are. So it's just to remind, you may not be aware, but there is a legal duty on us as a local authority to deliver a syllabus for religious education. And I personally see this as a fantastic opportunity. When I was training to be a teacher, I had a fantastic lecturer who sadly is no longer with us, who said, every child is a philosopher. The younger the child, the more philosophical. And Debbie and I are both early years teachers by background, and were sharing over a coffee earlier that that's very true in our experience, that our littlest children are really brave to ask big questions. And what this syllabus does is enable a sense of belonging. We think it links to our belonging strategy really closely. But given the events of summer, given the ongoing events in the world, we think it's really, really essential as an upholder, really, of community cohesion for children to be able to understand faith, religion, culture, and be able to talk about it with confidence, ask questions, and be curious. So I fully endorse this syllabus as is written. What it does is offer our very busy and hardworking education community, our teachers, an outline, really, of the curriculum of legally what they're duty-bound to deliver. So it's sort of doing a lot of groundwork for them. And Debbie and I invite any questions from committee. I'm happy to answer any.
Is my microphone on? Yeah. I'm Louise Bown. I'm counsellor for Southall, which is in Weymouth. I'm an RE teacher by trade. I used to teach in secondary schools. I used to lead RE in a local secondary school. I want to ask how you check that this is implemented inside schools. So I've been in a position where I've been trying to implement the current SACRA with an SLT that wasn't particularly interested. So I'm just wondering how you check that it's implemented.
Thank you. It's a great question, and you'll know the limits of our influence there. It is a place of influence rather than insisting, so the ultimate regulator of that is Ofsted. But what we intend to do, if this is endorsed, is use our early promotions, communications, and the training offer from January 2025 to really press upon our education community the importance of delivery of the syllabus. It is the law. But ultimately, we don't regulate it. That's for Ofsted.
I mean, sadly, my experience is Ofsted don't care either. My experience is Ofsted come in and are interested in lots of other things, but not quite that. But I know that's not your issue. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank goodness for George. Keeping on the straight and narrow. I must admit that, you know, with so many ethnic minorities and you know, increasing immigrant population living here, it's so important that we include everything that possibly could be. And I was really interested in the humanist side of things. I'd not seen that written down before. So I do think that that is something that as an alternative to people that, you know, haven't got a religion as such. But it certainly is an eye-opener, and it gives people food for thought. So I think in the future I shall take this on board. And if there isn't any more questions, then could I have asked for a proposer and a seconder, please, to take this forward? Thank you, Carol, as a proposer. And, sorry, yours, and Will will be the seconder. Thank you very much. And thanks for your time. And obviously the paper has taken a tremendous amount of work. Thank you for the chair and all the work that you've done. And I know one of our absent, unfortunately, she couldn't be here, Jindy, who's a teacher also from Wimborne Way, that she was saying that the paper, there was one or two things that she sort of queried, and I'm not sure that we could pass you on some of that to you, because she actually practiced it, and I believe she's on the committee, so she would have to declare, you know, obviously, you know, that she is part of that. So anyway, if you've got anything to say, that would be great.
Thank you. Yes, Jindy is on the SACRE, and we also have Councillor Robin Legg. Councillor Robin Legg is also one of our members, and we have a new one who I've not actually met yet, Councillor O'Leary, I believe. And so we're really blessed to have three. So, okay, that's gone over my head. So, but we're as a body, we're really very grateful for the support and the encouragement that we've had from the Education Authority members and obviously from the councillors, and it means a lot to us that, you know, it really is an inclusive project and an inclusive document, and yeah, we look forward to launching it with the teachers and getting it across to schools in January. So thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So Councillor Atwell did send a question to me, and I'm willing to answer that now if that's helpful. So there was a question over the weight given to Christianity and humanism, and it's just to ensure we are going to tweak the wording slightly so that we make it really clear that Christianity is still the kind of dominant faith and must be observed. And I think that was the essence of Councillor Atwell's question.
Thank you. Pretty much the essence of what Jindy was sort of asking or querying. So I'm really pleased if we can pass that on to you. That would be good. Thank you. Right, we've now got, we'll move on, and we've got the... Oh, do we? Sorry. Yeah, we've got a proposer and a seconder for the recommendation. So it's to recommend to Cabinet that it adopts the locally agreed syllabus. All show hands, please. Thank you, all agreed. Thank you very much. Thank you for that. Move on now to item 10, which is the work programme and forward plans. So if we can just consider the committee work programme and cabinet forward plans. So if anybody got any comments or they want to suggest any items that we ought to be actually adding to our programme of work. No response to anyone? You've all had a chance to look at that? Yes, good. Well, it's been a really good meeting today, and thank you all for your contributions. And there's no exempt business, so we can actually close the meeting, and that will be meeting again in the new year, I believe. So thank you very much for coming, all of you, and contributing. Goodbye.